Okay, so friends, are we recording?
Thank you for the pitch.
We are, indeed. So this is the third week on this. Let's summarize where we're up to and conclude. Should I ask everybody where we're up to?
No.
Spare you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we'll remind you.
Sam wasn't here, so I can't tell.
Well, it goes back to 2 weeks ago. So the good doctor was here 2 weeks ago. We shall refresh your memory. The story here is the encounter, actually it says pre-encounter of Yaakov and Esav. So Yaakov sends messengers as well as gifts, and to Esav, his brother, who had desired to kill him all these years since he usurped, stole the birthright. So he sends him a message telling him that basically it's a multi-layered message, and one of the simple meaning is no reason to be envious of me or to hate me, want to kill me, because Father's blessings have not been fulfilled in me. And in so saying, he says to him that I have an ox and a donkey and other things, but not agricultural blessing, which was the blessing that Yitzchak had blessed the firstborn with. That's not fulfilled in me, so that's a reason not to be, no longer to harbor this deep hatred. The Medrash says now at a much deeper level, I did mention, we spoke about the donkey, but the ox as well. He says, when he says an ox, he's hinting to Joseph. In fact, specifically, Moshiach ben Yosef. Now, why is the ox the symbol of Yosef? Because, in fact, later, when Yaakov blesses his sons, he invokes many animals in this, representing or describing the different tribes. Obviously, Yehuda is the lion, he's the king, the leader, and Yosef is described as an ox. Now, there are two Moshiachs, the Talmud says. Moshiach ben Yosef, Moshiach who is a descendant of Joseph's tribe, and he prepares the world for the second Moshiach, Moshiach ben David, descendant of Judah, of David. So he's telling him that Vayili Shor, Joseph is born. Deeper than that, he's saying, as far as I'm concerned, I'm ready for redemption. I've taken care of Lavan. I was in Lavan for 22 years. I overcame him. But more importantly, I elevated him. All the divine sparks and resources that were there, I garnered and elevated. I came out wealthy, and I have the 12 tribes, and they're all good boys and good girls, because each one was born with a twin sister. And we're ready. I'm ready for redemption. So that's the allusion to the ox. Moshiach ben Yosef has already come for me, embodied actually in his son Joseph. V'chamoir, we said, what's the donkey? It's also an allusion to Moshiach, because the prophet Zechariah describes Moshiach coming, Moshiach ben David, as a poor man, ani v'roichev al chamoir, an ani, a poor person riding on a donkey. I'm ready. Turns out that Esav is not ready, and even though Esav, when they meet, he's moved by Yaakov temporarily, and Esav, in fact, suggests that they join forces. Yaakov sees that he's not ready. Go ahead, I'll catch up. We will work on you and all that you represent, and we will elevate you too, and that culminates in the Messianic era, when Esav, and all he represents, which is basically Western culture, is elevated and used in the service of God, which includes everything, technology and science and all of its contributions, all of it, resources, wealth. Western society is uniquely wealthy in the history of humanity, when all of that is used as well in the service of God, which is happening largely. Western governments, for the most part, are democratic, and not just democratic, but institutionalized helping of the poor, social services, hospital, etc. In large measure, Esav is almost at the end of his refinement. That took quite a while from the time they encountered. Now back to the story. So when he wants to tell him, when Yaakov wants to tell Esav that I'm ready for Moshiach. How about you? That's what the messengers were going to find out. They come back and tell him he's not. He says, Chamor, the donkeys, I just told you because it's an allusion to Oni v'rochev l'chamor. The Rebbe's question, as you no doubt recall, is as follows. Anybody want to venture what the question is? This is from 2 weeks ago and last week. The basic question of our talk here. Anyone? Okay, we'll remind you. Scott, you weren't here, so you're the only one that's totally
And
innocent.
I'm the only one thinking about what the question was.
Yeah. So we'll tell you.
Was not a chamor.
Yeah, that's true. Yisachar, his symbol is also a donkey. That's connected because he's the Torah scholar. Like the donkey bears a burden, he bears the burden of Torah. And Moshiach's great quality is a great Torah scholar and teacher, the ultimate teacher. That's also a layer. But our question is, the Medrash doesn't mention that. The Medrash focuses on the poor man riding on the donkey. So what was our question? Our question was, yes, you had a risk and put your neck out here. Let's see what I have.
Because he came out with great wealth, isn't there?
Are you asking a question, or are you asking the question, answering what I'm asking?
I'm asking the question that you were asking. What was
That I'm
the
asking you to
question?
remember. Okay.
So, why does Moshiach not come in with great wealth and miraculous?
Well, it's something to do with that. That's not exactly the question, but it has to do with that. So you're on the right track. The question is that the Gemara, the Talmud points out that there are two contradictory prophecies regarding the advent of Moshiach.
Yeah.
One in Zechariah and the other in the book of Daniel.
But you said that if all the Jews observe the mitzvahs, will come in.
So the Gemara resolves it. The first
Miracles?
yeah, right. That's the answer. And that once we get the answer of the Gemara, then we have our question. But first we got to get the Gemara's information, which is what you guys are saying. So first the Gemara. The Gemara points out the contradiction. Here it says in Zechariah, poor man riding on a donkey, and Daniel has a different vision. His vision is on the clouds of heaven, miraculously and spectacularly. Well, which one is it? It's a contradiction. The Gemara says it's not a contradiction. The Gemara resolves, like it always does, resolves the apparent contradictions and says, well, it depends. The prophets are speaking about different scenarios because there's two ways that the Jewish people can be at when Moshiach comes. Meritorious, earned him through their righteousness, and that can happen, as I told you, very early, at any time, really. The potential for Mashiach's coming really was in the Garden of Eden, but specifically, had they done it right, that would have been the Messianic era. But specifically, the Gemara says, as I told you, the world history is divided into 3 epochs of 2,000 years. The first 2,000 years is what? Toihu, chaos. Second 2,000 years, Torah. And the third 2,000 years, which is from the year 4,000, Mashiach. So the last 2,000 years is potential for Mashiach's coming. So if we are meritorious, then he comes miraculously, spectacularly, and earlier than the deadline. But if we're not victorious, then he comes not spectacularly and kind of slowly, because the time has come. In the words of the Gemara, and these words are important to remember because we're going to revisit them in the answer. If Zochu, we are meritorious. Zochu means refined, translucent, pure. Then it's Daniel's prophecy that is the one that actually is realized. If Loi Zochu, we are not meritorious, translucent, pure, rarefied. That's what the word Zochu means, right? Zach, pure. You have to use on Chanukah Shemen, Zayis, Zach. You have to use pure olive oil. So if we are Lo Zachu, not pure, then it's Zechariah's prophecy. So it's not a contradiction. It's this one or that one, and that depends on us. Which prophecy will be the one that is realized? So that's what the Gemara says. So now the Rebbe asks now on this story, therefore, on the Medrash. Yaakov is saying, and he's way back in history, He's saying he's ready. So he's obviously meritorious. Now lead to the question. So why then, in his message to Esav, when he's saying, I'm ready for Moshiach, why does he possibly invoke a prophecy alluding to a non-meritorious messianic era, when he clearly is? He's saying, I'm ready. This is really early. I'm ready. He is Zochon. He's purified. He's ready, him and his family. So he should have sent a message that invokes not Zachariah's prophecy, but Daniel, something, clouds, miracles. That should have been the image, the underlying message to Esav. Huh?
The chariot.
Chariot.
On the clouds.
Pardon?
The chariot on the clouds.
That sounds good. A chariot on a cloud. That sounds dramatic and miraculous. In fact, Scripture speaks about that. So,
Ezekiel says.
Yeah, Ezekiel. Yeah. So that's the question.
But didn't you say before that Yaakov himself said that Esav was not ready?
Esav, but he's ready. I'm ready.
But
so
he seems to need Esav in order to bring Moshiach.
Yes,
what you said,
that's
what you
true.
alluded to before.
Yeah, but he's still saying, from my perspective, I'm ready.
Right.
So
But he's not saying the donkey.
about himself, he's not the donkey image. Esav's the donkey image. He is the miraculous image.
He explains it in the donkey image. Right?
Why is he? That's
the
how.
question.
The question is, why is Yaakov expressing his readiness now to greet Mashiach by invoking a prophecy that describes a non-meritorious state? One, that Mashiach comes because the time has come, and we're not God's promise, so God carries through. But he's way earlier, and he is meritorious. That's the big question of 2 weeks ago and last week, right? Which we are explaining.
What happens if he doesn't come in the 6,000 years?
Well, this is not a question if you believe what God says. He says he will. That's the promise. And before the year 6,000, as I pointed out, by the year 6,000, Messianic era is over. Over. So it's not a long time left in the span of history.
But it's not clearly said that anywhere.
The Gemara says, yeah, the
That
Gemara
it
says.
will be in 6,000 years.
Yeah, the Gemara says, yeah. Before the year 6,000. The Gemara, and certainly in Kabbalah, but it's in the Gemara divides up the epochs into three. Famous Gemara in Sanhedrin. Very famously quoted. And it corresponds to the 6 days of creation. We understand the symbolism, because it says in Tehillim that for Hashem, 1,000 years is a day. So the 6 days of creation are the 6,000 years, and the seventh millennium, or the seventh day, which corresponds to the seventh millennium, is the eternal Shabbos, the eternal Sabbath. So it makes sense. Now the point is that they matches up. That the Messianic era, again, happens in the Friday afternoon of history, like we bring in Shabbos earlier. The whole Messianic era is in this world. The seventh millennium is, we don't even have prophecies about that. About the seventh millennium, it says, Ayin la'ro'atacha, Ayin la'ro'ata elikim zulatecha. No eye saw it, but God alone. The Gemara says, all the prophecies are all talking about the Messianic era before the seventh millennium. And that's the era of world peace and life as we know it, except as we know it. Physically as we know it, except conquered illness and enlightenment, big except, and peace and harmony and maturity. The world will mature in the deepest, richest sense and discover all of the riches that nature itself has to offer. Healing properties, etc., etc. So it'll be an incredible utopian existence, but natural. Meaning to say, engaging the body and nature, not some transcendent, disembodied soul, angelic existence. But the seventh millennium, we have no description. It's something of a different order. So the whole Messianic era is before the year 6,000. Again, not a long time to go in the big picture. We also pointed out last week or the week before, again using the model of the 6,000 years, a day for God being 1,000 years. So where are we in history? We're the year 5,779, which means that when we hit the year 5,000, that's the end of Thursday, the fifth day of the cosmic week, the end of Thursday. At 5,000 began the cosmic Friday. So we're 3/4 way, 5,779, 3/4 way through the Friday of history. And when do you light candles already? You start, let me explain to you. When we bring Shabbos in earlier, as the mitzvah is, we bring it before sunset. 18 minutes, some bring it even earlier. And in the summer we bring it way earlier, because it's just convenient for us to bring Shabbos in earlier. There is a limit to how early, but we bring it quite earlier. That's the Messianic era symbol. It's a weekday, but it's Shabbos. It's been transformed into Shabbos. That's the model. That's not the model, but that's the model of the Messianic era. So we're now 5,779, 3/4 way through the Friday of history. We're past the afternoon. We're at the Plag HaMincha, we're not going into the details now, but this division of time when you can now already light your candles. Halachically, symbolically in the big picture. Follow what I'm saying? So, anyway, back to the question. What I'm saying is that in a way, so for us, it seems that we're going to be a hybrid of both prophecies. It kind of is the time, because it's really late in the game. It's got to be around now. It's the Friday afternoon already. At the same time, we're meritorious. The Jewish people have come through exile with flying colors. Flying colors. 2,000 is a beautiful parable of Rabbi Manis Friedman, who has spoken here several times, to describe the meritorious state of the Jewish people. Despite the fact that there's, observance could be more and all of the problems that we're aware of. But if you look at the big picture, you have to be astounded. And what's the big picture? So he gives a good example. A husband comes home from work and his wife has prepared dinner, a nice hot soup. He sits down and he says, "Back in a minute. I have to go out, back soon." So he leaves the house, he has to go on whatever it is, and he's gone. And he's gone not for a minute, but for an hour, and not for an hour. He's gone for the day, not just for the day. The day lapses into and stretches into a week, a month, a year, decades. He's gone.
Disappeared.
He's gone, decades. He's gone for decades. And after who knows how long, he shows up one day, and there on the table is the soup. And he says, "It's not hot. It's not hot."
Chutzpah.
Yeah. No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't say that because, my dear husband, that there's soup on the table, there's any expectation at all. That's quite amazing. So that's an amazing thing itself. And therefore, obviously, he would not have the complaint that the soup isn't hot. You were gone for decades. So it's a parable. Hashem reveals himself at Mount Sinai. Relationship is where I see you, I feel you. Then there was the first temple. God was revealed there as well. You wanted to feel the presence of God. You went there, you saw, you felt. To some degree in the second temple, not even as much. Temple is destroyed. God goes into exile. It's 2,000 years. Where are you? Not only where are you, lots of questions that would seem to indicate that how could you even be if you allow this to happen to us? 2,000 years. Don't have to tell you our history. And then when Moshiach comes, so before we get to that, it's 2,000 years later, so the soup isn't hot. We're not as pious and as enthusiastic and as warm as we should be. But Jews overall are still identifying as Jews, each one in their way. I'm talking even the liberal and reform, even the this crazy J Street, anti-Israel. They're also in a perverted way hanging on to their Jewishness. That's an amazing thing. You would have think we would have abandoned this a long time ago. Assimilated, disappeared, and abandoned it. It's 2,000 years. In one way or another, Jews are identifying, and proudly, increasingly so. We argue, for or against, but you're in the game. That's amazing. That's meritorious. Hashem's going to have a complaint, the soup isn't hot, that we're not, everybody's not doing all the mitzvahs, and you did that. Objectively, hey, your people have come through with shining colors. They connect to you, they believe in you, and they identify as Jews, and that is beyond amazing. In fact, it's impossible to understand. After we've gone through, we're sitting at this table here, or Jews anywhere doing whatever, next door even. It boggles the mind. No sociologist, no anthropologist. Give me some more words to study. Cultures and history could have predicted 2,000 years ago there'd be no temple dispersal and persecution like no people on earth had ever suffered. There'd even still be a Jewish people, or if there were, they'd want to be Jewish. Impossible. Impossible. Yet we are. We exist. We're here. That's a miracle. And we are identifying as Jews in one way or another, and that's miraculous too. So what I'm saying is that here we are in the year 5779. I'm suggesting, I haven't seen this written explicitly, that, so what is it? Meritorious or miraculous? Or it's the time? Kind of both. It is kind of the time, and it's meritorious. But back to our question with Yaakov. Yaakov clearly is very early in the game. He's meritorious. So why is he invoking the image of what? Of Loi Zochu. The donkey. Zochu means meritorious, and Loi Zochu means not meritorious. So he started to give the answer. And we explained that why, of all the images to describe a unrefined state, poor man riding on a donkey, why is that the image altogether? And it's not meant literal. It's not meant literally. It's become riding on a donkey. It's obviously, like all prophecies, are symbolic in their language and need to be deciphered. Some things are, almost literal, but everything has, much deeper meaning. So what's this business of riding on a donkey? So we explained what donkey means. Chamor is the Hebrew word for donkey, and we pointed out that the Hebrew word for the corporeal, the hardcore physical, is chomer. Chomer means a matter, physical matter. And we explained why the donkey is the symbol of that. Why does his name carry the same root letters? It's almost virtually the same word. Chamor, chomer, the same root letters, ches, mem, reish, make up both words, donkey and physical matter. What's the connection? We explained. Because the donkey is the symbol we can see of what? Stubbornness. Stubbornness. Donkey doesn't want to move, you have a hard time budging him. And that's the nature of the physical world. It is stubborn, meaning it's defined by ego. And moreover, this physical world is such that two things cannot occupy the same space, like the donkey. His space, you can't budge him. That means that in this world, everything's space. Where this is, I can't put this, and that's the end of it. In the world of spirituality, these limitations don't exist. In the world beyond ego, you can have a meeting of minds and of hearts and so on. But physical bodies, you can get very close, but they can't become one. We can share ideas, and then the idea can become one. Literally, one idea. But physical matter, your part, my part, mix it, but it's always going to be separate. Because that's the nature of the physical world. It's donkey-ish. And certainly we get to ego, etc. We're all, protecting our turf. We don't want to be budged. We want to go where we want to go. And no one's going to tell me what to do. That's the human ego condition. So that's why the donkey is the symbol of physicality. It means finite, limited, ego, separation, division, and so on. Clear? All right?
What happens if he comes on the donkey on the clouds of glory?
The donkey on the clouds of glory. Well, that's what I said before. Where we are now is a combination of both. Let's get back to our subject. We're just repeating what we said last week and the week earlier. Now, the imagery is riding on the donkey. So we've explained so far what donkey means. Now, this image has Moshiach riding on the donkey. What's the idea of riding on the donkey? A person rides the donkey because the donkey takes him or his burden to a place that he can't get to himself. So here is the huge paradox or irony, that the soul comes down to the world, to the body, symbolized by the donkey, the egoful, finite world, starting with the physical body, complete my sentence, and yet it's only through coming down here that the soul, what?
Can complete its mission.
Rides and achieves heights, right?
That it could if it were not in
That it could never reach if it remained in heaven forever. It's not just a question of the soul comes down and sacrifices its heavenly place to fulfill some divine mission. It's much more than that. We're saying that through that the soul rides and is elevated to a spiritual place, to a connection with God that the soul would never connect to if it was forever in heaven, ascending every single day. And we explained that last week, invoking several models to try and grasp this huge paradox, that through coming down in the physical world, that's where the deepest connection to God happens. It's counterintuitive. You would think the deepest connection is in heaven. You would think, this is all Hasidus now, so it's pre-Yutis Kislev. You would think, as Torah philosophy basically posited up until Hasidus, namely, you come down here to face the Yetzer Hara, and then you've earned your place in heaven. But heaven is the objective. Yeah, so there's an answer to how you ride the donkey here. You ride by you resist, and then you earn your place. We're not saying that. Chassidus is saying not that you come down here because you struggle with the donkey, with the ego, with materiality, with physicality, with all the temptations of life, and you overcome it, so you're elevated. True. We're saying something much deeper, however. We're saying that the deep connection to God is not in heaven, but here. And that we explained last week. We invoked many teachings to explain this paradox. Somebody wants to share one or two of them, or parables, or models. Yeah.
Hashem's deepest investment is down here.
It's exactly. We're saying that, but to understand it,
To reveal it is
all true. But we want to understand how is it that his deepest investment is in a world of ego and physicality and concealment. You would think his deeper, greater investment is in heaven. His presence would be greater in heaven than on earth. So we gave these 4 or 5 explanations. One of them, anybody? Brick is one of them. The most telling was the last one.
I wasn't here last.
Most telling was the last one, from human experience and from our own experience, and as expressed in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, which we've said, mind you, on a Shabbos morning. We quote this endlessly because it's the fulcrum, it's the crux of understanding what the mission is and why the deepest connection is dafke in this world, why God is invested, quote unquote, more so here than in the greatest heights of heaven. So the most telling insight or explanation was, again, I'm giving you a hint, from our own experience and a statement in Pirkei Avot that actually expresses that. So, hint, maybe want to think a little bit longer. Once I say it, oh, yeah, we've heard this so many times.
Mitzvah, short time in this world is equal to...
No, it says it's greater, and that's correct, but that doesn't explain yet. We're looking for an explanation. True, why? We're trying to understand why this is. So, no. Eizehu Gibor Who is the true mighty one? What does the Mishnah conclude? Say? The one who holds back. So what is this telling us? So just forget the Mishnah for a second. Just think about the human condition. And we're made in the image of God in order to have an appreciation of the way the divine works. And here is an illustration of that. So what was the point? Elaborate.
In order to express yourself, and also shown by the fact that you held back not to respond immediately.
Right. Your language is a little bit confusing. In order to express yourself, it's
Well, no, in order
more the issue. Where are you investing more energy?
You're going to be angry.
Whether it's anger or anything, where are you investing more energy? Where you express yourself or you contain yourself?
Contain yourself.
So this is the point here. So in heaven, God's revealed. Beautiful. Here, God contains His revelation. We don't feel Him. We can deny Him altogether. We can violate His commandments. We can do the opposite of His will and ignore Him and deny His existence. It's the greatest concealment. The greatest donkey here. Concealment. And yet, that's the paradox. Dafka, because Hashem is concealed here, that's really where He's investing His presence in a greater and deeper way. Going back to the human parallel to make it very clear, as we explained. If you're not you want to say something, whatever it is, and you don't. So to the other person, you're not nothing, no revelation. You don't know what's going on, and you don't know that anything is going on. But really, inside the person himself, there's a strong, he's invested, he's expressing the depth of himself within himself, more when he's not saying. So this world, it's an example, we brought several, this was the last one, closest to home because we have that with this experience, our own personal human experience. So all to say that in this world, where Hashem is concealed, He's really accessed, He's really invested more than the highest heights of heaven. Heaven is, we said last week, heaven is God's light. But here is the essence. Heaven is God's projection. Here's the essence. What was the example of the sun that we gave? Another one of our examples to illustrate the point.
The light rings?
There was that, but the sun, going about the sun. The thing I just said right now about light, well, okay. Blinded by the light. On the contrary, the paradox is, the more powerful the revelation, the less you can see the source. It's only when you wear these very, very dark glasses, where there's no light at all, that's when you see the orb of the sun. That's quite the paradox. That paradox exists because it portrays for us and gives us some insight that the highest levels of heaven, in a way, the higher you go, in a way, the more the essence of the eye of God's obscured. What you're getting is His love, His wisdom, His glory, all of the descriptions we learn about in Chassidus. We're getting His infinite light even. But where do we get the eye of God? It's here where there's no light, no revelation. So that's another example in our world which captures the paradox of where there's no revelation, that's where the essence is to be accessed. And the greater the revelation, the more the essence is obscured. So that is, we'll conclude with this and continue for the fourth week. That is the riding of the donkey. Riding means a soul. Riding a donkey means a person. Why does he use the donkey again? Because it takes him to a destination he can't get without the donkey. The soul comes down to the body to deal with the metaphoric donkey, the body in the world, in order to ride it, in order to get it to a destination that it will never access on its own in heaven. And what's that destination? A connection to the very eye of God. Invested only here in this world. That's the upshot. So the Oni v'roicha v'alachamoy. Now next week, we'll talk about the other messianic model of the clouds of heaven. And then we'll understand why Yaakov invokes this one. Notwithstanding the fact that he is meritorious. and it'll all come together. But I will ask you as follows. Here's the idea, friends. I'm sure you're not going to want that we come back next week and we're going to review all of this again and then go on for a 6th week. So here's how we're going to not just avoid that. I don't mind to repeat it. Think about this afterwards. If you think about what we just learned today, what's still fresh in your memory, and if you have any questions about it, because it is, ironic and paradoxical and all of the components, then we can come in next week and take it to its climactic and beautiful conclusion. But like anything, especially if the ideas are subtle, they require thinking about. So that's your challenge now. From this moment, as you're walking to the shul, well, it's fresh. The question, we'll go through the whole process. The question, we haven't answered yet. Started the process of the answer. But the final point of this, the meaning of the riding on the donkey, what donkey means, what riding means, as we just expressed. Discuss it amongst yourselves. That'll be beautiful. Share, talk Chassidus. I'm just going to, again, wrap a little story. This is a story with the Alter Rebbe's son, the Mittler Rebbe, who said, what is his wish? He wishes, what does he want with all the Chassidus he's revealing and teaching? He wishes that when two fellas, Chassidim, meet, what's their conversation? This. Whatever you use, the higher unity, the lower unity, whatever. But discussing godliness, discussing this, that should be the conversation. And then he knows he's accomplished something. Now that they come, hear what he's saying, and then go back to the life, come back next time, another Dvar Torah. It's live with it. That's the idea. Yeah.
When the Neshama comes down,